Hi, and welcome to Exit Stage Right with Martha Sullivan. This is the show where we talk about ways to buy, build, grow your business so that when the time comes, you can exit stage right onto your next adventure. This is where we talk about the business of business and ways that you can set yourself up and your business up for your best and brightest financial future. So, I am Martha Sullivan. Thank you for joining us today. I am your host at Exit Stage Right. So, now November is a time when we usually think about celebrating the harvest and showing gratitude for the fruits of our labors. And Exit Stage Right as a show, we're dedicated to talking about issues that support that eventual harvest, that time when a business owner or leader senses maybe it's time to go do something else. So they take stock and want to harvest the good work that they put into the business and move on to their next adventure. Oftentimes that means selling the company. That's kind of the ultimate harvest, if you will, where the hard work you put into growing the company actually pays out in the form of a purchase price. But harvest can mean different things to different people. And particularly in the case of family businesses, and I work with a lot of family businesses through my work with the Family Business Consulting Group. Today I want to spend a little time talking about why it's important to think about what harvest might mean for you and explore all the options for transitioning ownership of a company, so that you have a sense of what that might be when the time comes, whether that's soon or whether that's a decade or two away. So I think the best thing to do is to set the table first. There are really two primary paths for exiting ownership of a company. There's an inside transition and an outside transition. Inside transitions include transferring your shares to a family member. Maybe that's part of a gifting strategy or as an outright sale. It may mean selling your shares to someone or some group of someone's in management. Maybe you're in a position to set up an employee stock ownership plan and sell the company in effect to the employees. Or maybe you have another partner, another fellow owner you could sell your shares to, or to a specific employee. And last inside option is that maybe the company itself would buy your shares back. All of those fall under the heading of an inside transition or an inside sale. Outside transitions are really ultimately usually selling to a third party. That third party might be somebody in your industry, it might be a strategic player, maybe a competitor or a customer, but somebody that you don't know and you don't work that closely within the entity you own yourself. Um, it might be selling to private equity or another investor type of buyer. If it's appropriate, an outside option is going public. If your business is in the right market and large enough and has that type of momentum, that is considered to be an outside option. And on the flip side of opportunity, there's always the opportunity and chance to just liquidate the company, collect your receivables, sell your inventory, sell your property and equipment, turn off the lights, call it a day, and take what you can get from that strategy. And sometimes that's the best way to go, depending on your industry. So those would be considered outside options. Now, when you think about those options, there are different implications for each one of them, and different implications specifically in terms of how much money you might get at the transfer of the company, ranging anywhere from 0, because you're gifting it to members of the family, all the way up to the premium price that you might be able to negotiate with a strategic buyer. And everything else is pretty much in the middle, if you will. In general, selling to an outside buyer will get you the better purchase price than doing an inside transition. Well, why is that? That's because for inside sales, you know the people that you would be selling to, the people that might be taking over for you. So you are generally willing to accept less. Well, and why might that be? Well, that might be because reaping the fruits of your labors in what you consider to be your desired return on investment isn't always about the money. It's about what's important to you. We see this a lot in family businesses. So bear with me here. So in a family business, very often family businesses start out as a means to the end with the founder, first generation. And that end may be merely feeding his or her family. That is how it usually starts out. But over time, it evolves and it becomes more than just feeding the family. It becomes an outlet for serving your customers and serving your suppliers. And it becomes more than just providing a job for you and or your family members. It becomes a vehicle for creating jobs for others, for creating challenge and opportunities and careers for the next generation, whether they're in the family or not in the family. It also, over time, becomes a source of pride and a way to demonstrate the family's commitment to the community because you are employing just more than that one family. And these individuals that work at the company become colleagues and friends, and it's important to you to be able to give back to the community in ways that help these people provide for their families. So it also a family business or any business can become a vehicle by which the owner and the company are able to have an impact on matters of philanthropy or other areas of interest. So when we're a business owner is thinking about transitioning the ownership of their company, very often she's thinking about what it has meant to her over the years, thinking about what the future and what that transition might mean. And these aspects are bound to cross your mind, consciously or subconsciously. Chances are, if you are an owner considering transitioning out of your company soon and reaping the fruits of your labor, you may be thinking of it along the lines of one of the paths that I just described. However, that could also be true even if you're a brand new owner. I've known new business owners that have gotten going saying, well, our plan is to grow this puppy and then do X. We're going to turn it into, we're going to sell it to this industry player. And that's their single focus on what they're planning on doing. Or on the other side of the equation, I know business owners that are committed, heart, soul, every ounce of DNA, committed to my dad started this business. He passed it on to me. It's staying in the family no matter what. It's a part of our legacy. And you see this a lot in my line of work, and it all makes perfect sense. We need to have goals and a vision of where we're going. But rather than having a single path that you believe will be the path the path for the exit, therefore putting your blinders on. I encourage you, new business owner all the way to ready to exit business owner, to think more broadly than that. Two pieces of advice and why I say that. Well, first, why do I say that? Why do I say think more broadly than that? Well, because things happen. Things don't happen the way we want them to sometimes. And the broader you think, the more options your will be actually available to you. And so one of the reasons why I say that is because I've seen people end up taking that, having to do a U-turn sometimes. So if you think about it from the perspective, according to the Exit Planning Institute, there's a 50-50 chance that somebody will be forced out of business ownership before they're ready. So their plan to gift it to the kids when they're ready to retire may not be realistic because something happens and the business has to be sold right away. Maybe it's death, maybe it's disability, maybe it's a myriad of other things, and the kids are too small. They're little toddlers. Well, that dream is not going to come true. And if you haven't been thinking about and running the business in such a way that the company is transferable, it may not even have value for a surviving spouse to liquidate. So there are a lot of different implications that come up in why you want to think more broadly than that. So there are two tips or pieces of advice that I've been thinking about relative to reaping the fruits of our labor and making sure that we are in the best position to do so. And I started alluding to one of them already, but here they are. First piece of advice: keep your options and your mind open about the options that you have. Keep them as wide as possible and reality test them. Tip number two, or piece of advice number two: run your business as if it is always for sale. Always, always for sale. And I would tell you these two bits of advice, and I have given these two bits of advice to any business owner, regardless of where you are at in your business ownership cycle. These two pieces of advice apply. Whether you just bought into ownership of a company, or you just started your own company, or you're at the other end of the cycle and you're ready to wind it down. Keep your options open, keep your mind open to the options, and reality test them, and run the business as if it's always for sale. Let's do a deeper dive. So we already talked about the fact that you, or business owners there in general, very often are holding an assumption about what their path for exit will be when the time is coming. Holding those assumptions is quite honestly very, very limiting. It assumes you have control over which way you're going to go. You don't. You don't. You might have some say, but you don't have control of it. So, for example, let's go down the path of the family business. Family business owner, you believe it's absolutely going to stay in the family, period, end of story. Well, what if your kids don't want it? What if your kids, as darling as they are, aren't competent to run it? What if they have no interest in it? What if they're capable, but they're only doing it out of loyalty to you, not because they love the business or the nature of the business or the work that they would be doing? They might agree to run it, but is that really what you wish for your adult child, is to be working in a business or a career that isn't really doing much for them, and they're doing it just out of loyalty to the family? You know, might it be better in that situation to sell the company, obtain the monetary value out of the company, and then redeploy that into other entrepreneurial endeavors that the next generation has, rather than saddling them, if you will, with a business that they're only doing out of love for you, not love for the business. You don't have control over many of those factors. Let's talk about potentially selling it to management, or a particular employee that maybe you thought has been the heir apparent all along because they are a wonderful asset to the company. That may be, but they may not be able to pull together the financing to make it happen. And you may not be willing to carry on the risk to um, allow that to happen. Or maybe you would have to lower the price so much that it's not meeting your personal financial retirement goals. With an ESOP, ESOPs are not for every company. It really depends on the company's cash flow, the health of their balance sheet, and the size of the company. So you can control that over time. But if you're in that 50-50 gamble in terms of being forced to leave your ownership before you necessarily plan, you may not have that luxury. So you kind of get where I'm going, at least on the inside ones. Well, on the outside options, you don't have control over that really either. Because what if your company isn't attractive enough for anyone wanting to buy it? There's too much risk in it. And people aren't willing to put the money down for the risk that they're seeing in the company being able to generate the same results without you. Or maybe there was a party you've always dreamed of selling it to, like I alluded to earlier. What, we're going to grow this puppy and then we're going to sell the company to X. Well, what if X doesn't give you the price you wanted? Or what if X isn't interested? What if X goes out of business? Well, sure, there could be others that might be interested, but you may have been playing so strong to X that you've missed other things along the way. So, the other aspect of that you can't control in an outside purchase is, well, what if you found the buyer that is willing to pay you top dollar? I mean, top dollar. It's more money than God. But as a part of the deal, they disclose along the way that they're going to close the location headquarters and all the jobs that go along with it. Is the money driving you, or is the community and your loyalty to the community and the legacy and all those other factors important to you? So this is why it's so important to keep your options open and keep your mind open, because these are realistic examples that happen every day where our assumptions and expectations collide with reality. It's also why I really encourage those business owners that are indeed ready to embark on their exit path to explore all their options. Don't just assume the one, because you may not, for example, the kids, if you don't talk to them about the options and explore where they're at, you may be making assumptions. If there are multiple owners, there are varying assumptions, and what may be right for you may not be right for them. So it's super important to explore each one of those options and its possibility and probability of coming to fruition. Test the waters and narrow it down to those options that align with your value set and your goals. So if you're not sure what that value set is, either within your own mind, because you haven't thought about it in a long time, because how many of us have the luxury of time to think about it? It's good to call a timeout and do that. It's critical to do that if there are multiple owners involved. And you want to examine the values and come to a consensus before you start exploring your options. This is a personal process, but also especially if it's a family business and or there are multiple owners, it's a collective effort. So what's the process would be spending time talking about the values that are important to you to honor in this transition process and your goals. And then based on your collective goals, what is the shared vision of what you're trying to accomplish as a family, as a set of owners, as colleagues, as a company, whichever applies. And if gaining consensus is going to be tricky, consider bringing in a facilitator to help you do this work, because you want to do it before you start chasing options, because if it's skipped, unexplored expectations and needs could undermine the entire transition process and potentially sabotage the transaction itself. So keep your mind open to all the options, explore all your options, reality test them, possibility, probability, and alignment with your values. The second piece of advice was run the business as if it's always for sale. You know, it probably sounds like I'm contradicting what I just said, but I'm not. What I'm not saying always plan on it being a sale. I'm saying run it as if it were for sale. How do you do that? Well, you do that by running the company in such a way that somebody else will want to pay you good money for it. It means periodically taking a beat and looking at the company as a buyer would look at it. That means making sure your systems are good, that the systems can scale with growth. It means having a management team so there isn't undue dependence on the owner group. It means that there's a diversity in your customers and your suppliers, so you don't have too much concentration or risk with those relationships should one of them no longer be available to you, or should the relationships be jeopardized because there's a change in ownership. I like to think about it the way we take care of our homes and take care of our houses. If you own a house, most of us strive to keep our house in reasonable, not only just a reasonable living condition, but also so that if we had to sell it at a moment's notice, it would be reasonably attractive to the market. We don't let that roof get leaky. We don't, we trim the trees in the yard if they're starting to dangle too close to the house, or maybe it could come off in a storm and create severe damage for the house. We spruce up the yard with different landscaping, and we keep it freshly painted and all that sort of stuff. So somebody walking through your house tomorrow would look at it and want to move in, as opposed to look at it and say, oh, this is just a money pit. Same thing is true for our business. If a buyer looks at your company and they see outdated systems or risky relationships at risk, or a lack of infrastructure or all these things that could make the company wobbly, they're going to say, this is a money pit. I'm going to have to put a lot of money in it to get it to where it is today once ownership changes. And then, of course, that buyer is going to want to take it to the next level. So, what's different when you think of it in terms of always being ready for sale is you're still working on, growing profitability and growing the revenue, but you're also taking steps to remove those risks out of the company. So somebody could slipstream right in and run it just as well. So I like to think of those two pieces of advice as being kind of, the platter that you set the harvest on at the table when you're ready to celebrate the fruits of your labor and the reaping of all of that hard work. And again, I would tell you these two bits of advice regardless of where you are in your ownership cycle, whether you're a brand new business owner and just starting your journey as an owner, or you're an owner that is ready to move on to your next adventure. And why? It's just good business strategy. So thank you for joining us today. I'm so glad you were here at Exit Stage Right with Martha Sullivan. I really hope you found the information to be helpful. And as we wrap up today, I would like to invite you to join our list for our newsletter, our monthly newsletter. And I'm going to put up the QR codes so you can sign up today and get on the mailing list and stay close to the various tidbits that we share here at Exit Stage Right. So again, thank you for joining us today. Have a wonderful day. Go transform your business. I've got a really good feeling about this. Take care. Dancing like I don't care.